Human?
Earth to humans, wake up, wise up, do what you can, individually and together.
My name is Serena Simons. I'm the senior producer on the Earth to Humans podcast with one of my co-producers, Hannah Mulvaney, we're going to kind of be, I wouldn't even call it moderating because I think it's just going to be a very open conversation. But I really wanted to have a conversation with just a bunch of badass women. Like, that was my goal for today. I had recently read a book called Annapurna, which I don't know if any of you have read, but it was so inspiring. It's about this all-female climbing expedition in the 70s up Annapurna in Nepal, and it just chronicled their experience together on this. I think it was a 10-woman team or something like that, and just all the stress that came about that, and that was the 70s, so a lot has changed since then, and that was a very trailblazing kind of moment for women in the outdoors. But I just kind of wanted to kind of talk about the things that came up for me in that book, which was the way women are respected in the outdoors or not respected in the outdoors, just kind of the gambit of being a woman in the outdoors. And I know some of you have done a lot of incredible hiking, through hiking, some solo hiking, some not solo hiking, but it's just an incredible panel that we have today. Some biologists, some travel vloggers, some naturalists, and just you guys have incredible street cred when it comes to hiking. So I'm really happy to have all of you here today. But ladies, welcome to the Earth to Humans podcast. I just want to kind of get you guys to introduce yourselves briefly, and we'll start with Candy.
Hi, I'm Candy Podolsky. I've been an educator most of my life and loved the outdoors and taught a lot about the outdoors. Did an occasional hike now and then. But then retired up in Maine, and my husband passed away, and I started hiking more. And my son and I did the Long Trail together as a way to heal from all that. And I continued on and did all the 4,000 footers in New Hampshire, mostly by myself. People said I was crazy, but I became very comfortable in the outdoors. I feel like it's home. So it's kind of my hiking journey.
And I believe Matt made a film about that trip that you guys took together and the hike.
Yes. He and I are hoping to hike the Appalachian Trail starting in March or April, depending on my knee. He's going to go with or without me, but we'll see.
That's awesome. Diamond, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Wow. I agonized over this answer because I question all the time, who am I today? But I'm in Baltimore City, where I grew up. I have a background in environmental science. I have been an environmental educator for the last 10 years. During the pandemic, I switched to using social media as a method of environmental education, and it really sets my heart on fire these days. So I enjoy creating content that's fun, that shows where I am and what I'm doing and how I'm learning. And it's gotten to the point where next week we'll be traveling because my dream is to have an adventure travel show about science. And so I am shooting my own pilot very soon.
That is so awesome. And I can't wait to share that on the show once it's out. We'll definitely share that with our listeners. That sounds so cool. Edith.
Hello, everyone. I am, like Serena said, I'm recovering from coronavirus right now. I am an environmental scientist with the Department of Fish and Wildlife in California State. And a lot of what I do is I spend my time thinking about biology, reading about it, writing about it. Even on my time off, I am obsessed with learning all the species that are, in the habitats nearby. And so I truly am just in love with science and biology. And I sort of started sort of my hiking sort of adventures about 15 years ago, and Mo had a huge impact on my competence out in the wilderness. And she taught me how to backpack, and she taught me how to survive out in the Olympic National Forest and the national park. And so I'm just really happy to be part of the group.
Awesome. With that introduction, Mo, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Mo, and I work as a fisheries geneticist for the Department of Fish and Wildlife here in Washington State. I've been doing that for about 20 years. My graduate training is in marine invertebrate ecology. And so this was kind of the closest fit I could get a job in, but I've really enjoyed it because it's gotten me outdoors. It's got me sitting in front of a computer most of the time, but it's motivated me to get outdoors and see where the salmon live. And I've gone up all their tributaries that I work in, and it's been really fun. I have always just wanted to be outside since I was a little tiny kid. And by the time I was a teenager, the Catholic Youth Organization in Seattle had a hiking program for teenagers where we would go out into the Olympics or the Cascades for like a week with these camp counselors, and probably just terrorized everybody around us because we had like 20 screaming girls in a group. But that kind of got me started. And then I did a program with the University of Santa Cruz in my early 20s where we went out for months at a time for an environmental studies program. We were backpacking for up to 16 days at a go in the Southwest desert. And so I fell in love with the desert and learned how to be a long distance backpacker at that time. And I've carried those skills from my teen hiking and my that course all my life. And so I kind of lived to be outside backpacking in the summer, skiing in the winter, and finding mushrooms on the shoulder seasons. So, and Edith was one of my wonderful disciples who listened to what I said. And it was so much fun to take Edith out on a backpacking trip. She was in so much pain, and you could just see how much joy it brought her to be out there. And it was just, we sat in a meadow and watched marmots, and it was just so wonderful. So anyhow, she still comes up to look at marmots with me sometimes when she can. So it's been great.
So awesome. Hannah.
Sure. So I'm Hannah, originally from the UK. I became a biologist because I wanted to be outside. And then I got a really desk-based job that I loved. And I got very kind of caught up in city life for the first 5-6 years of my career, working as an author and researcher. And then realized that I needed to get outside. So I decided to quit my job and move to Australia, as you do, and just really revived the love for the outdoors that my mum had really instilled on me at a really young age that I'd almost kind of forgotten about. And spent 2 years in Australia just really building on that love, and then moved to New Zealand after that, where I got stuck because of COVID. And it was a good place to be during the pandemic. So that's when I really sort of ramped things up and started going on 4, 5, 6 day hikes on my own into the wilderness, and watching lots of instructional videos on YouTube to make sure that I was being safe and getting lots of advice from other people. But now it's all I can think about doing. It's just what I want to do every single day. And yeah, it's led me into lots of new passions that I never knew that I had. And I feel like once you start doing one outdoors activity, you meet people that are doing all of these other ones, and then you want to do all of those. So yeah, I'm kind of just more excited for my future and what it's going to hold now that I have refound this love for the outdoors. So yeah.
Incredible. As you can tell, the experience and knowledge in this collective group of women should intimidate you. I think a lot about STEM fields and women not having access and just all the barriers in place. And I feel like all of us made it. You know what I mean? Like we pushed past and we did the thing to get where we wanted to go. So I'm really proud of all of us. But yeah, I kind of wanted to just start this conversation with I would not consider myself a solo hiker by any means. I do hike by myself, but I wouldn't call myself a solo hiker. I like hiking with other people. I feel safer hiking with other people. And I can talk a little bit about that sort of that feeling of anxiety. I live in a pretty white area up here in Tahoe, and so there's not a lot of people of color up here, and that in of itself can feel very othering, but I know being a woman can feel very othering too. Has that been your experience with hiking by yourself? Do you feel safe in the outdoors? Do you feel comfortable in the outdoors? Has it been sort of a progression where you maybe started out not feeling safe and then, found your comfort level? What has that been like for you guys?
When I first started, I remember having this moment of terror when I was up at a lake in Montana, and I was by myself, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I thought, I'm just as safe by myself as if I had other people here. And I sort of negotiated that fear, and I've never felt it since. The only time I'm fearful is one time I was taking a friend of mine on her first backpacking trip in the Smokies, and I thought that we were in a really isolated area, but we were on a reservoir, and so there was boat access into these remote sites, and I'm like, oh shit, because or I guess I shouldn't say that, but oh no,
you can say shit, it's okay,
because this is the Appalachian Mountains, and I'm with a Chinese woman, and so it's that we're already kind of operating a deficit. And then we see these guys. I'm like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to hide in the bushes so they don't see that we're here. And so we just, whenever boats went by, we just concealed ourselves, and we were fine. And that's, and then I've seen guys when I've been backpacking in other remote areas, and they've had firearms with them, but so I always talk to them, and I'll just hey, what you doing? And, oh, are you seeing any animals? And just be friendly with them so that I can check them out to see if I need to be fearful. And I've never needed to be fearful, because they're hunters, and they're looking for game. And so we just talk about that, and that's fine. So that's kind of, it's sort of an evolution, but I always am aware of what's going on, and as we all are, I think.
I am not a solo hiker. I prefer to be on the trail with either a group that I'm leading, or with my partner, or with someone else besides me. And it's not because I'm afraid to be alone. It's more so this generational fear that Black people have out being outside, that's been ingrained in me since I was so young, that I didn't even think to want to hike alone, and so now I'm sitting here like, oh, maybe I should try it. But as I think, that anxiety takes over me, because the rhetoric of it not being safe, not from animals or anything, but from other people being out there that mean us harm, prevents me from wanting to try to hike alone or do things alone. But when I'm in the wilderness, because I do backpack, and we have our solo nights, which I enjoy, that completely fades away. And so I question how much of it is real, like an actual fear that I have, or just a belief system that I need to let go.
Diamond, I completely empathize with that. I feel like at least for me, hiking solo, it feels almost like you're not supposed to do it. Like it's this unlearning that you have to do where it feels, yeah, everything that society teaches us is real, with valid evidence, right? Like there are reasons why we feel so much anxiety when we go out into the outdoors, but it's this active unlearning that has to happen in your brain in order to like get you to do the thing. And I still feel anxious. I still carry that anxiety. And I've had plenty of my friends tell me, you know, statistically, and I'm not afraid of wildlife either. Like you said, I'm definitely more afraid of other humans, particularly men. So I completely empathize with that.
I don't want to go off too much off topic, but I just yesterday learned of a study where like generational fear, it is turned on in our DNA. And so even though you, like, let's just say that you would have grown up and no one would have taught you these things, it's still in your DNA to be afraid of things that have harmed your family, your great grandparents, generations and generations ago. So I just, I don't want you guys to think that it's all learned. I think it's also in our cells.
That's a really good point, Edith. Yeah, they've done all kinds of studies on just trauma response and generational trauma and how that affects our bodies, particularly Black women who are, giving birth. That was a really crazy study about like sort of that ingrained fight or flight response of like daily living as a Black person, as a Black woman, sort of taking its toll on your physical body. And, impacting your, basically like the fetus inside your body, and it can have adverse effects. So yeah, I mean, that's been documented. There's evidence to back that up, that, that fear sits with us and is real and does a lot of damage, in our minds and in our bodies. So that's a really good point.
I tend to be really stubborn, and sometimes when I think about doing certain things by myself, if it's a very difficult hike or it's a place that I've never visited before, I do get a lot of anxiety, not because I am afraid of people. I think I tend to worry about sort of conditions and what I'm going to experience, and like, do I have the skills to keep myself from not getting cold and not getting lost? I also sort of have like some infirmities, like my knees hurt and I have like a herniated back, and I have all these sort of things that I'm like, okay, like, is this still within my capability? I think that without Mo being an example for me, I probably wouldn't have done as much as I've done now. I had hiked before by myself before I met Mo, but I've since gone backpacking by myself, and I tend to do sort of more exploratory, going to trails that I've never been to, that people that I don't know anyone that's done them either. And so I don't really have a very big group of people that like to do outdoor things. So a lot of the times I actually am more comfortable doing things by myself because I know what I can do. And then I don't have to worry about keeping other people safe, keeping them warm, keeping them not from being lost. And so I actually do really enjoy doing things by myself. Of course, it's nice to be with other people, but I do tend to get sort of more joy out of doing something if I'm on my own, because I don't have to worry about anybody else.
I totally get that. I do a lot of long day hikes solo, and the anxiety that I feel the night before is crazy. I make myself nuts about any little detail that I can think of to make myself nuts about. And then I get on the trail and it just melts away. And then I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I do this. Like it comes back, but fear can be really hard to deal with.
So for the, going back to what you said, Edith, that feeling of confidence out in the wild, I think that's also something that's ingrained in us just in general, is to mute our confidence at every turn. Just the way that things are structured in society, we second guess ourselves, we question ourselves, even if we're the most qualified person in the room. And I know that all of us have probably felt that way, where even if we are that person, we're still like, I don't know, has that come up for you while you're hiking, and how have you overcome that, I guess? Hannah, I know you told me a story of you on this sea cliff doing some crazy things, and maybe what happens when we're overly confident too.
I mean, what I was going to say about confidence is that I feel like for me, confidence comes from being able to get myself out of a situation. And obviously you don't want to get into the situation in the first place, but being prepared for it, being trained, being aware of when a situation occurs, you like, oh, hold on, I know exactly how to get myself out of this situation. And obviously I'm not saying for anybody to get themselves into any dangerous situations in the first place, but a lot of my confidence with hiking on my own has come from being in a slightly nerve-wracking situation where I think, oh, hold on, I've got every single thing that I need to get myself out of this situation, and resolving it instantly, and then carrying on with your hike, and actually then looking back at it and thinking, oh my gosh, I just did that. And that gives you so much confidence. And I think being in the outdoors over a certain period of time, you're going to get yourself into a situation, whether regardless of what that situation is, depending on where you are in the world, could be anything. And being prepared for that and being able to get yourself out of that situation is such a big confidence booster. And I think as well, like going back to the thing about going on your own, I waited for so long to get a partner or a friend that was into the outdoors as much as I was, just waiting for this person to appear. And I would have been waiting for the rest of my life. I could have been waiting for the rest of my life to find that person to go and do this stuff with. And I'd had enough. So that's why I went and decided to train myself in all these things, to get the right kit, to make sure that I was really, really prepared for any of these situations. And now I can just do it on my own, and I feel quite confident doing that.
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? Like our collective experience. And I just love Mo and Edith, your relationship is sort of like mentor, mentee. And that's so important too. I think like one thing I keep going back to is so I live in Tahoe, super snowy place. I don't ski. I've done it a couple times and it's been kind of fun, but I don't like the crowds. And I also feel like, as an adult and you go and do this activity that, like 5-year-olds are doing better than you because they've been doing it their whole, it's like, I feel very intimidated. So it's great to have mentors that can, push your limits and encourage you to facilitate that confidence within yourself. But it's also possible to do on your own. Like you said, Hannah and Candy and Diamond, like you guys have kind of, it's this inherent need to want to be outside that kind of pushed you forward to make it happen. Cause you can't wait for somebody else to make it happen for you. But Mo and Edith, I kind of want to go back to you guys. Can you talk a little bit about like that relationship that you guys do have and why that is so important? And Edith, how just, I guess, formative that was for you into getting you to where you are right now. And Mo, if you had a mentor that helped you.
Yeah, I feel that Mo changed my life. I think that I remember we were like in the back of somebody's car, one of our coworkers. We had gone to our usual Friday lunch outing, and I remember I had just started working in the lab, and I had only been in Washington State for about a month and a half. I'd never been there, but I went to work there. And I remember mentioning in the car, I don't even know why I mentioned it, but I said, I really want to visit this place called the Enchanted Valley. And it actually lives up to its name, but it requires backcountry skills. It is such a long, to do it in a day, it would be like over 26 miles or something. And I knew that that's probably not going to happen in a day. So I remember Mo just sort of like looking over at me, and she was like, oh, I'll take you out. And that little like split, a couple of minutes, I think has had such a profound impact on my life. I like sort of want to get a little teary. grew up in Southern California. I didn't actually go camping for the first time until I was about 20 years old. And so when I met Mo, I was in my late 20s. And now because of her, for the last 10, 11 years, I've had such beautiful experiences.
Edith, that was beautiful. And Mo, your response to that?
Yeah, well, I actually totally remember that trip. We were going out to whatever that crappy place is that we used to get these burgers on Friday. But yeah, and Edith said she wanted to go backpacking. I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. Because I do, even though like people think I'm like this badass because I'm off backpacking on my own and going into remote places, I still really enjoy taking people out on their first trip, or taking people out for a while until they get comfortable. Because I was taught how to do this. I wasn't born knowing how to do this. And I love increasing women. Like, you get so much physically and emotionally and mentally by being outdoors, and humans need to connect to nature, and on and on and on. So anyhow, I was like eager and ready to take Edith out. And so the first thing we did was we went up to Marmot Pass, it's a difficult hike. But it was, I thought, for the biggest bang for the buck, it's like 5 miles to a very beautiful area with beautiful animals. But it was tough. It was really tough. And Edith's feet just like came off because her boots were too tight. But she didn't complain. She did take pictures nonstop. So it was like, we're having to go at this glacial speed so that Edith could look at every single thing. It was so much fun to see her enjoying herself. And it was really great. But it's like, what do we eat? Well, here's a Cliff Bar. And I was trying to like prepare her to be out there, but it was just like, you never really know what you need until you're out there for real. And you may, like, some people bring all their fears with them, and Edith just brought all her curiosity and wanting to learn with her. So it's like she didn't quite have enough food, and I think her sleeping bag wasn't quite warm enough and things like that. But it was still fine. She learned a lot. And then the next spring, we did the Enchanted Valley, which is just this absolutely gorgeous place in Washington State. And you have to have skills to get in there. We did I have a way of doing it that's really workable for people who are not like totally hardcore. You can go into a base camp 6 miles in, then we do a mega day hike for about 15 miles. But Edith had gotten herself in shape, and we did that. Didn't we do that with Audrey? Yeah.
We did. And there had been a really, bad storm in the winter. And so we actually had to like crawl, and I have a bunch of pictures of that hike because there was these massive trees
that had fallen
on the trail. So we're just like up and under and
and Audrey, who's another a friend of mine from Washington, well, Edith, she had 2 little boys, and she hadn't been out ever on anything more. I took them all out for a 1.5 mile backpack with the little tiny guys, the 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds. And we went a mile, and they, had to carry the kids halfway, but it was great. And so she's like Edith as far as just absolutely loves being outside. So the 3 of us did this hike together, and it was just so much fun. And it was sufficiently difficult and challenging that it's like, you learn how, like, it's a 26-mile round trip hike, but the way we did it, it's like, oh, well, we could do this in a long weekend. And just a lot of skills were involved there. And those guys just did great. And it was having people, like, I take people out and they complain bitterly about some things that are happening. And, it's like, it's raining. Yeah, it's raining. It's Washington and it rains, and things like that. It's like, well, okay, deal with it. But Edith and Audrey just like 0 complaints and just loving everything. And it did rain, and you guys were kind of like, well, what do we do? And I said, we put on our jackets and we keep hiking. And we did. And the valley, when we get up to the valley, it was like extra beautiful because it's this flat valley with these steep sides that go up a couple thousand feet. And right at that time of the year, there's these waterfalls. The whole valley has waterfalls coming down. And in the rain, it's like extra beautiful because you're in the rainforest, and it was kind of misty and dark green, and oh, so pretty. So anyhow, it was so much fun to share that valley with Edith and with Audrey. And now it's become Audrey's like go-to hike, where we took her teenage son there, and she's brought friends there. So it's really, really cool to get people out there and increasing the fun.
I just want to mention one thing. That was Audrey's first time leaving her two young sons since she had given birth. So her kids were probably like in the 5-ish year old, and she hadn't been out backpacking since before she had them. So I think it was sort of like almost like a rebirth for her too, to just be able to reconnect to that part of her life.
Yeah. And to be able to leave her kids behind and make her husband deal with them for a couple of days was a great thing. Yeah.
Diamond and Candy, I want to come to you guys on this sort of note of mentorship. And Diamond, I'll come to you first. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that for you? What is motivating you to take folks out into the wild with you? What joy that brings you, what that does for you, and kind of what your goal is when you do that and when you go out?
Sure. I can totally attest to the importance of mentorship, especially having a woman there with you to lead you. The first time I went backpacking, I came into the experience with very little outdoor exposure. I had gone camping exactly one time for this forestry course that I was taking in college. I wasn't a hiker. I don't even know how I made it through that first backpacking trek, to be honest. But I had Edith's spirit. I was very eager. I was very excited to experience something like that coming from a city. And my guide was this little tiny woman, probably like 5'5". I'm 4'9", so I'm also really tiny. And I said, man, if she can do it, I can do it. And her maternal nurturing energy was the exact thing that I needed to feel safe and assured to try on something that I had never really heard of and no one in my family had done either. So that really changed my life. That first backpacking trip changed my life because I had someone to guide me that we just vibed. It was a vibe the entire time. And I remember the last couple of days, we were going over our last pass, topping at maybe 11,000 feet. And we were following this really tiny goat trail along the ridge. It was very scary. And since I trusted the guide so much, I said, well, if she says that it's safe, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and get through this. The group fell apart because we couldn't all handle it, but she handled it in such a great way. And we decided to go back the way we came and sat on the mountaintop to take a couple of deep breaths to calm down. And as I was sitting there on the top of a mountain, I'm looking at the Sawtooth Mountains ridgeline, in the horizon, and all these butterflies start to hatch from around me on top of a mountain. And it was a pure exaltation that I felt in that moment. And so when I'm guiding others, my goal is just to allow them to experience something beautiful. I don't really try to set any expectations for them. I address any concerns that they may have, but I really just allow the people that are with me to experience it as they will, because it's their moment and it's the moment that they need, and it's their own. So yeah, mentorship is key.
And Candy, you are the wonderful mother to our producer, Matt Podolsky, and Matt's entire career life is now dedicated to conservation and the environment. And I know that you had a huge hand in that. And, you you're doing these mother-son hikes together over the years, and you're planning another one. So I guess if you could talk a little bit about what that was like for you raising Matt and, going outside, wanting to encourage this wonder and the same feeling in him, and what that's like for you now.
It's interesting. I did not have a mentor. I wish I had. It would have been lovely. But Matthew and I bonded over our love for hiking. I was busy. I had a crazy job running a preschool. It was just, I didn't have a lot of time, but whenever we could get out there, we did. And we kind of learned together. It was definitely, there were a lot of mistakes made along the way, a lot of blisters, but it didn't seem to matter. So we just always made time for each other to do that, because it's hard to find, it's hard in suburbia to find somebody who wants to go into the wilderness and hike with you, so that was hard. But yeah, we sort of learned the hard way, how to do it. And then I started to realize that I had to take a more active role in planning it. I had to be the mom who made sure my son didn't get injured, so I learned, and really that was all before the internet. So it wasn't as easy to find the information that you're looking for, but I picked everyone's brain, and started to learn. And Matthew, as he was maturing, was doing the same kind of thing. He was out there with his friends and learning. So we shared ideas, and it was, we sort of grew together with that. It was amazing.
I think it's just, I'm so jazzed about the bond that you guys have and have cultivated over the years. It's truly, I don't know, that's what, if I ever have a kid, like that's what I want to instill in them as well. But, that makes me think about, like, as women, and I just want to define women as anyone who identifies as a woman, by the way, just period. As a woman, there's this thing about asking for help. There's this thing about asking for help and wanting to also appear competent. But there's also, like, I think there's an inherent want to exchange ideas, to get as much information as we can, to share and engage with each other. And I think that just personally, I think that is a sort of a trait that's not encouraged, I guess, in a lot of ways. At least in my job, you want to appear as competent as possible, and you want to be. There's just a lot wrapped up in that, and so I think it's really great. All of you have mentioned, like, even if you didn't have a mentor, but you were asking questions, and you were, getting information, and you were willing to share, willing to admit your limitations. And I think that is what makes us really amazing, but also I think can make us feel self-conscious. And coming back to that idea of confidence, and, just wanting to have as much confidence as possible. But I guess, how would we encourage more women in the outdoors outside of mentorship and that kind of thing? Like, I guess I still feel like there's a lot of barriers and a lot of things in our way. Mo and Candy, do you think that that's changed over the years? Do you think that we have more access now? Do you think it's like a more welcoming place for women? Do you feel like we've achieved something?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure that I know the answer. I feel like sometimes the issues that I've run into are because of my age. People questioning, why are you on this trail? Do you know this trail is really steep? Are you sure you're safe? And it makes me just absolutely crazy. But I don't know. I think that there's less surprise seeing women outdoors than there used to be. So I do think that we've come a ways, not far enough, but we've come a ways. My negative experiences have been very minimal. I would be, I'm more comfortable in the woods than I am walking on a city street, but good question.
Yeah, I think the more we're out there, the more it normalizes seeing women out there. When I was younger, I've been solo hiking since I was 18, and I'm in my mid 60s now. So at first there was never ever another single woman out there, but gradually I've been seeing women on their own now, and more younger women on their own. So I think that women are gradually figuring out how to do it on their own. And I do a lot of volunteer work with the Washington Trails Association, which is, we go out and clear out those old growth trees that have fallen over the trail through the winter storms, and trails that have washed out and things like that, to make all the trails accessible for everyone, and clean them up, and build new trails and things. And one of the other things, so by doing that, the volunteers, there'll be 20 people in a group, and there'll be people who like to hike, but they've never backpacked in those groups. And sometimes they have they'll be overnight. We can only go in so far in a day. So there'll be overnight trips where we go in with backpacking gear, and we camp, and then we work on trails a little bit deeper in. And so that's a really good way for people to learn how to backpack, because they've got this quorum of people around them that can help them with whatever they need. And we do an all women's team usually once a summer, where we go in. And so that's a great way for the age span ranged from 20 to 75 last year. It was really great. And so I can see it sort of, just these little tendrils going out to try and foster women's outdoor experiences, and everybody's as well. And one of the things with the Washington Trails is that they've been building coalitions with various other organizations so they've there's let's see, I think it's Girls Walk, maybe it's a Black women's outdoor organization, and then there's Latinos Outdoors, and so the Washington Trails has a gear library that provides backpacks and stoves and sleeping bags and boots and rain gear and all these things that people don't have in I just kind of cobbled together whatever I could find in the basement of our house when I was a kid, from the Boy Scout stuff of my brothers and things like that. But a lot of people, it's those are the limiting factor. One of the limiting factors is just the gear to get out there with decent boots and a backpack and a tent and a sleeping bag. And there's you can do it with a very basic minimum, but you do have to have a way to eat and a way to sleep and a way to walk safely. So I think hopefully that's introducing young people to outdoor experiences wherever they are in the Pacific Northwest, from high schools and junior highs and things, and then also opening it up for women. And they're and the Washington Trails specifically tries to they have a diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're very serious about it, and including people with disabilities as well. Anyhow, I think awareness, and then having people out there of all representing all different abilities and groups, and also having access to what people need, transportation as well as the gear.
Ahead of this week's episode, I reached out to listeners and friends wanting to get a sense of what their experiences have been like hiking alone as a woman. And I got this amazing response back from Christy Choi as she shares a story about hiking alone in Joshua Tree as an Asian American woman.
I'm a Korean American filmmaker who loves to travel and hike alone. Hiking is my sacred time for generating creative intentions. thinking about new questions. I protect hiking time for myself as much as I protect my sleep or time with loved ones or time to work. And especially when I'm in the middle of a busy period, hiking is my way of resting my brain and maintaining my mental health. I have a story that I like to share when people ask me what it's like to hike in remote areas alone, especially as a woman of color. I was actually in Joshua Tree the week that the Atlanta spa shootings happened. I was spending every day pretty much without my phone on, no access to internet, really immersed in the park and hiking a lot alone. And I was blissed out. It was incredible. I felt really rested and I was really enjoying myself. And so I didn't actually find out about the news of the murderous hate crimes until I turned on my phone. I think it was the day after the shootings had happened. And so I was flooded with messages and news alerts and, just correspondence from fellow Asian folks in my community asking if I was okay, if I needed a process. And people were traumatized and living that out in real time. And I was overwhelmed with sadness because I realized that even though I had a couple of days of feeling so safe and peaceful and really, really rested and at home in my own body, meanwhile, in this country where racism, misogyny, neocolonialism all work together, a group of Asian women, many who look like my mother, were murdered. And so it just took the wind out of me. And I remember the next day on my hike, I was more suspicious than usual of any passerbys. I'm pretty used to being the only woman of color on trail. And of course, when hate crimes happen, statistically, they actually engender more hate crimes. People get inspired to perform more acts of violence when they see something happen. And so I was very paranoid that I was an easy target. I kept looking over my shoulder while I was on trail, which I resented because it meant that once again, white supremacy had robbed me of my freedom and clarity. And even even in a more remote area of the country in nature on some of these trails that I was on, white supremacy still had its hold, right? It still made me feel afraid, made me feel unsafe. And that is so frustrating. But it's a daily reality of being a woman of color. And usually I hike with limited fear about being harassed or assaulted on trail. Typically, I'm more concerned about getting dehydrated or experiencing sunstroke. But since that experience, I've thought more about hiking safety. And I've been researching different tools. And, just the takeaway that I have always is that ultimately, us women on trail, us women of color on trail, we need to look out for each other. We need to protect each other. We need to make the trail safe for us.
We'll be right back. Earth to Humans is back and better than ever, with a slate of guests and topics that we can't wait to share with you. If you like the work that we do here on the show and want to support us so that we can keep bringing you the good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/earthtohumans. For as little as $1 a month, you can support the show in a big way. Patreon subscribers will get access to a range of exclusive ETH content, including our book club, author talks, archived episodes, merch, and more. That's patreon.com/earthtohumans for more information on how you can join this kick-ass community of nature-loving weirdos. There's so many barriers, right? Like, it's not the most intuitive thing, especially if you didn't grow up, exposed to the outdoors or camping or hiking or, all kinds of outdoor recreation activities. And I had a conversation with Rumap once, and she's the founder of Outdoor Afro. And she was talking about how there are so many people out there that just say like, oh, Black people don't do this, Black people don't swim, Black people don't this, Black people don't camp, Black people don't hike. brown people don't hike, and that's just the stigma attached to that. But I think what people forget is that there are systems in place for and reasons for that. Like, it's not just that we don't want to do the things, it's that we haven't had historical access. We don't feel safe. We don't feel valued out there. And so going back to what Candy said about, being on the trail and seeing more women, and that it's no longer as much of a surprise, for people when they see us out on the trail. And Edith and Diamond, I wondered if you still feel that way. Do you, like, I still feel that way. I still feel like, when I'm around the corner and I'm by myself and someone sees me, they're usually like a little, they're like, oh, that's cool. They're like, good for you. Like, we don't see that very often. But it's still not, I definitely don't feel like it's normalized yet, for POCs. And I wonder if you can maybe share some of those experiences. Do you feel like, we still have a ways to go on that front? Do you feel like, your safety is part of that equation because of the way that you look, or, do you feel like that's irrelevant on the trail?
I think it's all of the above. When I decided to take up environmental science as my undergraduate degree, and taking that forestry class, I was maybe one of 3 women in the class of maybe, 10. It wasn't very big, but when our professor announced that we would have to go camping to do some field study, I was immediately struck with horror because I had never been camping before and I didn't have any of the things. And he was just going on and during the lecture about, what to bring, what to expect, as if everyone knew what was going on, and I surely did not. And so I had to go to his office hours nearly in tears to admit that, like, I don't know what's going on. But I was very surprised in the way that all the bros rallied around me and they gave me their extra stuff. So I had a sleeping bag, I had a sleeping pad, and I was taken care of. So I think, yes, we have a ways to go in making sure that everyone has access and feels comfortable in the outdoors, though I will say that there are resources out there now and more than ever.
I tend to be in my own little world when I'm out there, and I did learn from Mo to greet people and to talk about the conditions of the trail and, like, what's up ahead, what's behind. And I haven't really noticed anyone having a particular reaction to me. I think I probably am white passing. And so I don't think I may look super out of place to some people. I do have sort of in my journey to find people that like to do the same kinds of things. Several years ago, I signed up with a meetup group, and it was an overnight, 2 nights in San Jacinto State Park. And I don't remember the makeup of the group, but I do remember that the person who ended up hiking with me was a cop who was a Trump supporter and was very loud about how supportive they were of the president at the time. And I actually have never felt as unsafe as I did on that trip. And so I actually vowed to never go out with a meetup group again. And it's sort of, I don't know, it was just sort of like such a gut reaction that I didn't want to be so, like, if I was going to be out, I didn't want to be out with people who had those sorts of beliefs. And just recently, because I want to start doing more off-trail work, I want to do some more cross-country travel and do some more scrambling. I've decided that I actually need to get some more, sort of low-level mountaineering experience. And in this sort of, like, I'm having to come to the realization that I'm gonna need some more help. And so I've signed up for the wilderness travel course with the Sierra Club out of the Los Angeles chapter. I went out with them before I even knew about the course. I went out with them a few weeks ago to do a cross-country hike in Joshua Tree National Park. And the group was very lovely. They had a huge span of ages. I was one it was like 13 of us total. And as far as I could tell, maybe there was 3 minorities in the group. And I ended up talking to the other Latina in the group, and it turns out that she had like done the PCT by herself a couple years ago and was planning to do all these like really like gnarly hikes in this country and in other countries. And we sort of both talked about wanting to do some volcano hiking in Mexico. And in Mexico, it's like a whole other, women don't hike by themselves in Mexico. You actually you have to hire a guide. There's like this whole thing associated with doing outdoor stuff in Mexico. And anyhow, I'm sort of rambling here, but I am in this wilderness travel course. I, again, am one of maybe a handful, if maybe not even a couple of people of color in this class in one of the most diverse areas of California. Again, I'm sort of in this surrounded by people that don't have very similar experiences to me. But I'm sort of, we're all there because we like to do the same things, and hopefully we can learn from each other, and it'll be a better experience, hopefully, than the meetup group that I last participated in.
Diamond, I think that I was surprised to hear that all the bros kind of rallied and gave you gear like that. That gives me hope. That gives me so much hope that, but it kind of made me think, kind of about what Hannah was saying is she didn't want to wait around for something to happen. Like she just kind of took charge and she was like, it's not happening. I need to make it happen. But as far as sort of like safety and acceptance, and because men dominate the trails and they dominate outdoor activities and recreation and just all of these things that we love, do you think that the onus is on men to kind of shift the needle as far as talking to other men, working with other men, and talking amongst themselves to kind of heal some of these issues? Or do you think that we would just be waiting forever for that to happen, and change wouldn't happen if we just don't go out and do it ourselves? Or do you think that there is some sort of responsibility for men to kind of break down those barriers for us?
Whoa. I think that we as individuals should take control and the power of our own lives and stand firm in the things that we want to do no matter what. And systemically, we need to address that there are pockets of people that have possessed a lot of power for too long, and that power needs to be disseminated. And so we all have our responsibilities to make sure that our society is functioning in a way that's healthy for everyone, men, women included. And I was just having a conversation with my partner recently, and I asked him if when women aren't around, if he hears his friends saying things about women, does he stand up for them? And he said, absolutely. And so I do trust that there are those types of men in the world doing the work on our behalf. And also as women, or anyone, however you identify, go for it. No matter what, safely.
I love that. I love that so much. Edith and I as you were sort of mentioning, that there are those good men out there. Edith and I call them unicorns because we are both single and haven't had the best luck when it comes to men, I guess, and dating. So, Hannah too. So we're all kind of like, oh man, I know they exist, but like, where are you guys? Like, I want them to, speak up as your partner does, and just be proactive and recognize that even if we're not there, it's important for I guess the psyche of the other men that you're with to just make sure that you're not letting sexism slide or racism slide or whatever it is. Like, we all have to hold each other accountable. Any other responses to that question?
I think it's really clear, well, to me anyway, behaviors that make another person feel uncomfortable. Like, I've been traveling on my own for almost 4 years now, partially living kind of van life, and being approached by a man and being asked if you're traveling on your own, being stared at, being given help that you didn't need or ask for. And these kind of behaviors, it's clear, I would think, that when those behaviors are displayed and a person is obviously feeling uncomfortable, that should indicate to you as a person that you don't then repeat that behavior. So I think just being a decent human being, it's not just in the outdoors, it's in everywhere, no matter where you are, indoors, outdoors, wherever, just keeping that behavior going, and just, I don't know, just thinking about when you are going to approach a person who is on their own. I've been freaked out a few times and it's always by a single man coming up to you and asking weird questions. So if that is going to be a situation like that can be stopped before it happens. So just having that awareness and not freaking women out so that they then feel like they can't do what they want to do would be great.
Yeah, but there's part of me that's like, yeah, that would be great. And I'm just an anxious person, I guess, because I haven't really gotten the vibe from any of you. Well, you know, it sounds like there have been situations where you have felt uncomfortable or felt unsafe. But in general, it sounds like the majority of your time spent outside by yourself or in a group has felt relatively safe. But I guess so, like, there's this book that I love called The Gift of Fear, and it's all about how women need to trust our intuition, and that we have this gift of fear that we just don't always listen to. And we have this gut sense that we don't always listen to. And so he kind of breaks down in this book all of these different scenarios of, you know, horrible things that have happened to some of these, some of his patients, some of these women, you know, violence, assaults, that kind of thing. And he kind of breaks down the moment that these women stopped listening to their intuition and stopped listening to their fear. And how if they had, you know, not that it's their fault that they were, you know, assaulted by these men, but that when you are sort of like faced with a situation like that, you're on the trail, there's a strange man asking you weird questions, like you have to listen to your fear. And he has these different categories of existing. So there's like condition white, which is like you're just, you know, chilling on the couch, not a care in the world, you're not aware of your surroundings at all. There's condition yellow, you know, which is sort of like you're aware of your situation, your surroundings, but you're still kind of like enjoying your time. But you know, you definitely have like, you know, a finger on the pulse of like what's going on. And then there's condition orange and red, what, you know, it just goes further and further. And I do feel like on the trail, I'm always at least condition yellow. Like I never feel like I'm condition white, where I'm just like loving it in the moment, feeling like, unless I'm, you know, at the destination, the spot that I want to get to, and I know I'm by myself, but I still feel this like, it sounds like it's just me maybe, but I still feel like almost this ingrained survival mode in me constantly, and I don't know if it's something that I should want to get rid of or not, or if I'm not enjoying myself as much as I could be. But anyone else sort of feeling anything similar to what I'm anyone smell what I'm stepping in, I guess is what I want to ask.
Yes, I understand that. And don't beat yourself up about that. It took the death of my husband to get me out there by myself. I was totally afraid to do that. I didn't hike as much as I wanted to because I had this fear of going out alone. But then, you know, once I realized what a healing thing it was, and Matthew and I did that long distance hike together, it just really changed my whole perspective. It became, you know, the place where I wanted to be, and the place where whenever anything was going crazy in my life, that's where I wanted to be. So it was an evolution, I would say, but brought on by an unfortunate event. But there's no rules. If you would be more comfortable, find other people to go with. You know, you don't have to make yourself crazy. There's, you know, it's supposed to be fun, and you know, so maybe go a little slower. You don't have to make it you don't have to have a rule that says, that you say to yourself, I really want to get there. How about just, I want to take this little baby step, whatever that would be, and go that way. And if you don't get there, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're outside enjoying yourself.
I think that inner sense that something is maybe off is natural, and that's something that should be trusted. But I don't think that it should be a point of fixation, because I do think it can go too far. And I experienced that when backpacking with a good girlfriend of mine, and we were having a fine time, and it was two of us together, and a single man approached us, and he had some questions about where we had found water. And it was a very casual encounter, but she was so spooked by encountering this man. And I don't know what it was, but her paranoia was contagious. And then I started tripping and looking behind me and wondering if I was okay. So though I do think it's perfectly natural and that you should be tapped into your instincts, into your gut, don't let it cloud the experience of having a good time.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good advice. I think I want to get to a point though. Like I love hiking by myself. It's sort of like, I just wish the world was different, is the best way I can explain it. Like I love being an empath, but the world is so harsh, and so like sometimes being an empath sucks. Sometimes being a woman sucks. But I think that's really good advice. Like baby steps, feeling out your own comfort level, going out with friends, with other folks that you feel comfortable with, to try to get yourself out there. And then maybe that is something that you can dip your toes into. But, if you could say something to, folks that are, maybe getting started, we talked about a lot of the access issues, and there are a lot of resources out there. So, if you don't have gear, if you don't have a mentor, there are those ways where you can find people and find, these things that you would need to get started. But I guess sort of spiritually, emotionally, what is it that gets you out there, keeps you going out there, and what would you say to encourage more folks to do the same?
I would say that if someone has a desire to get outside, your first step doesn't have to be very big. Your first step can be going in your backyard and observing the birds that fly through. The other day, I felt anxious, and I just went in my backyard and laid on the grass, and that was good enough for me. And that was a perfectly fine outdoor experience that was valuable and important to do for me. And so just start small.
Hiking for me is my Zen place. It's where I heal from everyday craziness, and I think that can be found in many ways. And just taking a walk, start slow, see if you can find other people to do it with, because then you can either learn together or you can learn from the other person.
Yeah. So like Diamond was saying about just experiencing the world around you when COVID locked us down, I'm obviously somebody who needs to be really active, and I recruited my other friends that I normally ski with. Normally we'd be out on the weekends, and we formed the Ladies Corps of Discovery, and we started doing these giant hikes all over Olympia, is the town that I live in, and finding, okay, we're going to find all the old growth rhododendrons in the city, and just finding cool trees in the fall and cool flowers in the spring, and ways to get to the beach. And so it was really a nice way to connect to our city. And and you can do those kinds of things, with kids and with people who need to be on sidewalks, and but just getting people outside, I think, is really important. And it's just like how I feel connected to the world, is that I'm out there and I can see, I was watching the mergansers this morning, and it's just, and watch the sunrise. And that's like just making sure that as humans, we are animals, and that we connect to our world, that we're all a part of this. And I think that's really important. And so I hope that even if it's just small ways that people connect, that they do connect to the world.
I was going to say, be inspired, like allow yourself to be inspired by other. I get really inspired by other women who are out there doing it, who are, I remember moving to a community in New Zealand where it seemed like every single woman that lived in the community was running up mountains and swimming across freezing cold lakes and doing all this stuff. And I was like, wow, okay, you're giving me ideas, you're giving me ideas. And before I knew it, I just couldn't stay inside anymore because I just wanted to do all of this stuff. And I just had this amazing earth to explore. So whether those women live in your community, whether they are found through social media, they're out there and they just provide this constant source of incredible inspiration, including all of the women that have joined us for this episode today. So just find your inspiration and get out there.
Well, I feel probably the only time I feel really complete and whole is when I'm outdoors. And so if there are other people that might get that benefit as me, like I'm shoving you out the door now, because it is like this endless source of just like completeness, and it just feels wonderful. I honestly don't think about anything else when I'm out there, which is awesome. It's just quiet in my mind mostly. I think that what's helped me is just taking little steps towards things that are outside of your comfort level. I have realized that things that I thought would be really scary or things that I probably wouldn't do, and then I just like close my eyes and I jump and I do it, and then I end up feeling really competent and really sort of proud of myself, and like, oh man, it's the fear and a lot of it is like in our own selves. And so if we just sort of lower that a little bit and then take the leap, I think it really pays off.
I've mentored Edith, and now Edith is mentoring me with all of her lightweight backpacking tricks.
Oh,
yeah. So
nice.
I've incorporated quite a few of those into my stuff now. I've even got a Mariposa now.
wow.
Yeah.
That's fancy. Since I'm so small, I started off ultralight, and I don't know what y'all been doing before that.
Before that, it was a 54-pound pack for a 5-day trip.
Yikes.
That's not including water. That's if you have water source.
Yeah. You're down to like 20, 24 or 22 or something.
Wow.
Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Nice.
Edith Martinez, Candy Podolsky, Hannah Mulvaney, Diamond Clark, and Mo Small. Thank you all so much for this beautiful conversation. I will definitely, I feel like very energized leaving this conversation. I feel really inspired by all of you. Thank you so much for your time. And we will include photos on our show notes page of everyone today. We'll link to socials and websites so you can follow folks that want to be followed. And I think moving forward, like on the Earth to Humans podcast, I'm really thankful for this conversation. I want to have more conversations like this and definitely have all of you on the show again at some point. So thank you all so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Sarinah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
This is great.
I had so much fun recording and editing this episode. And if you liked what you heard and want to support the work that we do, consider joining our Patreon campaign for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/earth2humans. We also have a new Instagram page for the show, which you can find at Earth to Humans Pod. Earth to Humans is a production of the Wildlands Collective. It's produced every other week by Serena Simons, Matt Podolsky, and Hannah Mulvaney. Our intro sequence was edited by Matt Podolsky with shouting assistance from the Foothill School of the Arts and Sciences kindergarten class. Nozomi Takeyabu makes original artwork for each episode of the show, which you can find at wildlandsinc.org/ETH, as well as trail photos and bios from the women on today's panel. And finally, if you haven't already told all of your friends about the show, leave us an honest rating and review. It really, really helps other folks find the show. Audio samples used in the intro sequence were provided by the Macaulay Library at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and today's music is by Blue Dot Sessions.